Hi, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the event so far. For this next session, I'm pleased to introduce Adlane Fellah, founder and chief analyst at Maravedis Research, for a presentation about how managed Wi-Fi as a service can unlock value across vertical markets. All yours, Adlan.
Thank you, Catherine, and hello, everyone. Welcome to this RCR Wars Wi-Fi forum, and thanks for having me today. So, yes, my name is Adlane Fellah. I'm a chief analyst at Maravedis, and I'll be spending the next 20 minutes discussing managed Wi-Fi as a service in various vertical markets. So the agenda today is, first of all, I think we need to make sure we align in terms of the definition of what is managed Wi-Fi. And from there build the case for discussing enterprise-grade Wi-Fi in MDUs, which stands for multi-dwelling units, one of the most vibrant verticals when it comes to managed Wi-Fi. And then we'll move on to a different flavor of residential managed Wi-Fi, which is now almost could call it a carrier-grade residential retail Wi-Fi, and I'll explain later on what that means. It's a kind of a different approach to providing managed Wi-Fi in the residential space. And finally, some exciting research that we've done recently for a client among what we call micro businesses. Those are businesses with less than 100 employees and businesses that generally don't have an IT staff on board. Just a few words about Maravedis for those who don't know who we are. So we are a boutique wireless infrastructure analyst firm since 2002, and time flies. We specialize mainly in analyzing private wireless networks, Wi-Fi being one of the technologies looked at, but also done research in the CBRS, LoRaWAN, and the conversions of Wi-Fi cellular solutions through our engagement with the Wireless Broadband Alliance for the last 10 years. What do we do? In essence, we provide syndicated market reports like other analyst firms out there. We do a lot of custom research because many customers have very specific needs that don't necessarily fit into a subscription service. And we provide both marketing and strategic advice. Areas of coverage, they include the multifamily, which I mentioned today, hospitality, enterprises, smart cities, and what have you. And finally, the marketing services I mentioned. So let's dive into what is managed Wi-Fi and what's the difference between unmanaged Wi-Fi and managed Wi-Fi. I think the first distinction here is that unmanaged Wi-Fi is really what we call consumer grade, where pretty much you go to your retail store and buy whatever is available and place it in your home, in your best capacity and hope for the best. And in contrast, managed Wi-Fi is really one where you have, as a result of professional design and deployment, you have engineers assess the environment, they do RF mapping, and they strategically position access points to optimize coverage for specific use and usage trends. Another important distinction is that in unmanaged Wi-Fi, there's really no centralized monitor or control. The service provider has zero visibility past the modem. They only learn about Wi-Fi problems when they occur. Managed, on the contrary, provides remote 24/7 monitoring and management. The provider sees the entire network, every access point, connected devices, real-time performance metrics, and issues are detected more and more proactively, especially with AI. Another very important distinction is, of course, security. Not much in terms of security in unmanaged Wi-Fi. Typically, consumers' routers often run on outdated firmware. They use default passwords such as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they lack network segmentation. Therefore, every home network becomes a potential vulnerability. On the opposite side, enterprise is really the higher level of security with WPA3 encryption, VLAN segmentation, regular firmware updates, intrusion detection. So security is really centrally managed and kept current. Another important distinction is obviously service guarantees. In unmanaged, there's no service level agreements, uptime, if Wi-Fi underperforms, there's no much accountability. The service provider points to the modem, the consumers points to the router. Nobody owns the problem, and that's really an issue. In managed, there are service level agreements back performance guarantees. We define uptime commitments, response times, performance thresholds. So essentially the service provider owns the experience end to end all the way to the device. In parallel, also in terms of the support and troubleshooting as a result of all of the features I just mentioned, and managed, it's the end user troubleshooting required. Usually consumers pick up their phones and they scream at their service providers or reset their routers, and they don't understand what the problem is, and that's a painful experience typically. On the contrary, with managed, you have a dedicated support and proactive maintenance. At least that's what is being sold. One call to resolve the issue. Technicians can, have visibility to diagnose the problems, push fixes, and dispatch a truck roll if needed. And so typically there's no finger pointing. Another aspect that's very important is the basic QoS capability. So in unmanaged, there's really no or little basic QoS capabilities. Consumers, they typically don't have the power and the sophistication to prioritize traffic. Video calls typically compete with streaming, gaming competes with downloads. So performance typically suffers. Managed, advanced QoS, bandwidth management, traffic is intelligently prioritized according to the user needs, video conferencing, time-sensitive applications. And so the network adapts to dynamically. Last but not least, typically in unmanaged Wi-Fi, there's a channel interference issues are common. The neighboring networks on the same channel causing congestions and poor quality of service. In managed, there is, channel are coordinated and the power levels are tuned to avoid interference. Now moving on to, what that means in an MDU space. I think what's important and the reason why we done a lot of research in MDU is that, the world is pretty much going vertical. More and more people in the Gen Z and Gen Y are likely to rent instead of buying. And they typically rent in multifamily properties because it's just cheaper. And those properties tend to become smaller and smaller units and with more amenities. So property developers are compensating by providing a gym, a pool, and other types of services. And that has an impact on the network because those residents want connectivity throughout the property. There's obviously, 20 plus devices now owned by the typical households. And in terms of lifestyles, those young generation really want to remain connected throughout the property, alongside the fact that, of course, there's the work from home phenomenon that, they're still ongoing today. So in terms of what the residents actually want, residents obviously don't care about technologies. They want to move in ready. They want to be able, they don't want to call their service provider and call and, have to wait and sign up, credit check and all of that. So benefits of that is that there's no waiting. And to achieve that, developers need to provide pre-installed Wi-Fi. In terms of connected lifestyle, I mentioned earlier, they want guaranteed speeds. So they need a dedicated internet access. They want to be always connected, and that means that includes seamless roaming throughout the property. So you need a property-wide internet by default. They don't want any headaches, so quick problem resolution, best-in-class customer support. All of this really fits into the definition that I provided earlier of managed Wi-Fi. These are some examples of the recent research we have done on MDU. I invite you guys to look at some of that later on. Now, the second approach is residential retail managed Wi-Fi. That's something that is being developed by the Wireless Broadband Alliance. Traditionally, there has been a fragmentation of CPEs over the years. There's been the accumulation of an installed base with different makes and models, which has created really a deployment chaos for the service providers. Each of those CPEs had a proprietary middleware, and so that creates a lot of vendor lock-in and the headaches for the service providers. With this new approach, which is OMWI, stands for Operator Managed Wi-Fi. There is a middleware layer that's open source. This is based on the RDKB reference design kit deployed by the likes of Comcast and Charter and Purple OS. And so that provides more leverage for business service providers, broadband service providers to deploy multi-vendors. Traditionally, there's been a siloed management with different consoles for each gateways and extenders and mesh nodes. OMWI aims to enable a single pane of glass, one interface for the entire CPE base, and one training for technicians, one tool for the analytics. Also, we're coming from a traditional way of doing manual configuration to automatic configuration. That means that if something is being done on the manual configuration, that can potentially work for thousands of devices. But when it comes to hundreds of thousands of devices, it's just not applicable. So OMWI really aims at delivering the zero-touch connection and channel optimization. We're currently on phase 2, which was released in December 2024, and have added new network topologies and auto configuration. Another aspect is self-healing. Obviously, it's impossible to react to all those makes and models in the millions of devices. So the aim here is to enable a proactive detection and automatic resolution before customers notice. It's important to note that those were based on the Broadband Forum TR-181, which provides about 130 remote diagnosis tests. And so there's certainly an improvement for service providers. There's also a work towards coordinated firmware with large fleet of different versions of CPEs and firmwares out there. The July 2025 TR-369 was updated to add software modularization targeting components updates without firmware replacement. Security is also one that's provided advanced architecture designed for millions of devices in TR-369 with multi-controllers compatibility and zero trust approaches. Obviously, all this results in more scalable architecture for service providers, which have deployed millions of devices. And so the bottom line here is really that operator managed Wi-Fi provides a way to transfer CPE management, from an operational burden into a sort of competitive advantage, providing broadband service providers with serious, a better subscriber experience and operational efficiency. The last piece of my presentation has to do with small businesses that I mentioned, businesses with less than 100 employees. So we interviewed about 50 managed service providers that are serving specifically that market segment and providing them actually more than managed Wi-Fi. It's more of a NAS, network as a service, because the management includes the actual endpoints, which are the computers, all the way to the firewalls, access points, switches, and cybersecurity. But it was interesting to discuss, what sort of pain points these MSPC when it comes to their businesses. Typically, we're talking here about a law office, a dental office, an attorney, a retail chain, and one of the top pain points we have uncovered was that those businesses really want to focus on their business. They have no IT staff, they have no IT knowledge, they have no interest in even setting up their own guest Wi-Fi, and so they don't want to be fixing anything. So they really have a trusted relationship with their MSPs when it comes to managed connectivity, including managed Wi-Fi. They want to have predictable costs. They don't have surprise license renewals and equipment that stops working. They don't want to have unnecessary technology refresh cycles. They don't want to become Wi-Fi experts, basically, and they just want everything to work together and trust blindly their MSPs. To achieve all of those benefits, they have a certain feature requirements. They want fully managed networks, meaning someone actually monitoring the performance, handling firmware updates, fixing problems before the business owners even notices, and security is stable stacks. I want firewalls, threat detection, and content filtering, especially when we're talking about healthcare practices, law firms, and accountants to be able to handle client data, HIPAA, and PCI compliance. They aren't optional, but they don't want to the businesses don't want to configure these aspects themselves. They also expect guest Wi-Fi that separates and secures the network and provides network segmentation between the different stakeholders with VPN access when there's staff working remotely. And some of those businesses we have interviewed have multi-locations, and so they want to be able to grow that franchise or adding a second office with the best simplicity. And they don't want to. They want to focus on patients, the clients. They don't want to focus on VLANs. In terms of the business models, those businesses really are looking when it comes to managed Wi-Fi, managed connectivity, and NAS. They want predictability. They want predictability both in terms of the performance, but also on the monthly cost. They don't want to have big upfront hardware purchases. They want something that provides their predictable cash flows, and they want a provider, an MSP, that's trained, that's supported, and incentivized to keep them running. So they have a very close relationship with their MSPs. And at the bottom line is that they don't want to think about Wi-Fi. They just want to go to work and that for the system to work as promised. To finish off, so I obviously have looked at only a few verticals, the residential in MDU, residential retail, and then small businesses. But obviously, managed Wi-Fi is very relevant in a number of verticals. That includes obviously hospitality is a big one, or connectivity, is one of the very on top of the wish list of guests. Retail also environments have incredibly became Wi-Fi dependent, whether it's POS transactions, inventory systems, customer-facing apps, etc. Public venues as well require connectivity throughout the events with very high dense environments. Transportation is one also where increasingly great connectivity is expected, including in flight. And of course, offices, which is what the traditional managed Wi-Fi is. As a recap, what managed Wi-Fi is becoming the norm, and that norm applies throughout all of the verticals that I have mentioned. But it's increasingly the norm in also in residential, which is kind of the last frontier or moving from best effort to fully managed. I want to share some resources here. We have a newsletter. We have some predictions for those interested in our MDU research service or SMB. Please contact us. And thanks for your attention.
Yeah, thank you so much for that presentation, and thank you all for joining. We'll see everyone at the next session.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Thanks, everyone, for listening.